Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our channel, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and we have a very special guest today, and I'm going to bring in my co-host who's going to introduce him. And here's my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. Hi, Janis. How you doing today?
Hi, Mark. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to have a great show for you today. Some real old history stories. We have our special guest is an old friend of mine I've known and worked with since I was 12 years old. Though he was at Saint Hill, I worked with him on the ship for 7 to 8 years. But today we're going to go back to Saint Hill, back to the early 60s, back when things were starting to roll at Saint Hill and everything was going great. And our special guest is Ken Urquhart, who lives in Scotland currently and has a good life there. And he's going to come on and give us some stories.
Hi, Ken.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Janis.
Hi,
Lovely
Ken.
to be with you.
Great to see you again. It's been such a long time.
Long time.
I'm going to put the slide up of Ken, okay? Here you go, Ken.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's the handsome young Ken. That was taken on the ship back around 74, I guess.
Yeah. No wonder all the girls were after me.
That's right.
Of course, the fact that I had a single cabin of my own, didn't mean a thing.
You were so dashing there.
And
playing the father of the bride.
Yeah. And additionally, for those, the caption there is, Ken was also known as the LRH, L. Ron Hubbard's personal communicator for many years, starting at Saint Hill in England, and then on the Flagship Apollo, and then finally at the Flag Land Base in Clearwater. And he was, before Janis, before the messengers, he probably was one of the closest people to L. Ron Hubbard on a daily basis. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. At Saint Hill. He was closer than anybody else there.
That's right.
Yes.
So, Ken, we want to welcome you.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me.
So, Ken, do you want to just give our audience a little information as to what your training is, what your, who you are?
Who I am?
Yeah, who you are.
And
how you got to be, the butler and, your training in Scientology and that type of thing.
Okay. Well, let me see. Let's start with I got into Scientology in 1957.
Okay.
And I was 19. I was introduced to it by a family friend. And my introduction was 15 hours of group processing over one weekend.
Right.
And that was very good. I liked it. But what really got me were the TRs in the presence of the auditors, the group auditors, because I was a student of music and I suffered hell with stage fright.
Okay.
And these guys obviously had that completely taped, and that hooked me. That's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I actually didn't qualify for the professional training course. So I spent the next few years, I got some individual auditing. I did all the training and processing I could on the public level. And in 61 or 62, I went to have auditing from Edgar Watson, who was a Saint Hill staff member. I had heard that he was a very good auditor, and for some reason, I decided I wanted him to be my auditor.
Okay.
So I was living in London. I went down every Sunday for well over a year to Edgar's house in East Grinstead, and I had a session, and the auditing was very good. I loved it, and it did a lot for me.
Good.
Edgar was responsible for books, tapes, and meters. So he was quite busy because he had to get these things manufactured and stocked and sent out. Then one day, I think it must have been 63, Edgar just mentioned kind of like it wasn't a pleasant surprise for him that LRH has just told him that he was now also responsible for staff procurement.
Okay.
That Edgar welcomed. Anyway, the next Sunday, he says to me, I have to replace the butler.
Mark, can you show the butler photo?
Oh, okay. Well, it's going to show Saint Hill. So anyway.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
Okay.
so let me just intercept here. This is Saint Hill, where Ken was going every Sunday to get auditing. It's located.
Not yet.
No, I was going to Edgar's house.
Oh, his house in East Grinstead. Okay.
Yes.
And this is where L. Ron Hubbard was living,
Yes.
and was training people to do Scientology.
Yeah, and where Edgar worked.
House.
Yes.
It's in this house.
And I got several photos,
Janis,
of Saint Hill. So we got this photo, and then here's Saint Hill with the lake, the pond, right? That's on the property.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I've got, there's LRH at Saint Hill. And then here he is with the people, right? People could come up to him and talk to him anytime they wanted to. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he would go out for walks and so forth. And actually in this picture, I wanted to show you that my dad is behind L. Ron Hubbard's left-hand shoulder. And my brother is in the front of the picture with the little red-headed girl, which is Suzette Hubbard.
And then there's this picture here. That's the same scene, but from a different viewpoint, from behind LRH, and your dad is there on the left, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the next one's the butler. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I was told that he was caught stealing one of LRH's cameras. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
right.
So you replaced him?
He was out, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Edgar asked me if I was interested, and I said no. I'm thinking, I'm not a domestic servant. I don't want to be one. I'm not trained.
But weren't you waiting tables in London at the time?
Yes, that's what I was doing for work, because it gave me time in the afternoon to play on the piano or go swimming.
Okay.
So I guess
how old were you then?
25.
Okay. And so when you became his butler, what were your duties, and why did you agree to be it eventually?
Well, after I left Edgar, having told him no, I began to think it over, and by that time I was very aware that I was very tired of waiting at table. It was a dead end, and I needed to change my life. And I was very aware of how much I owed L. Ron Hubbard for what I had received through his work.
Uh-huh.
And here I'm offered a chance to give something back to him, and I'm saying no. That didn't seem right to me, so I called Edgar and said, yes, I would like to apply. And I was then brought down to Saint Hill Manor for an interview. I spent most of my time in the interview with Irene Thrupp, who evidently approved of me. And then Edgar took me into LRH's office.
Let me intercept here. Irene Thrupp, she was the L. Ron Hubbard's secretary at the time. Is that correct, Ken?
She was his personal secretary, yes.
Right.
She was not a Scientologist or not otherwise part of the org.
Right. She just worked directly for him, and that was it.
Yes. And she was a wonderful woman. I loved her. One of the best.
And Ken, at that time, you all were just hired as personal staff. There was no C organization or contract or anything like that, right? You were just an employee, and you paid by Hubbard, Hubbard, or how were you paid?
We were paid by Hubbard Communications Office.
Okay.
There were 2 or 3 corporations there, and I was the director of one of them for some reason.
Well, you were the butler?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
What were your duties?
I was the butler for about 4 to 6 weeks. Then he issued an order saying I was the household officer.
Oh, okay. So you then became the boss of John Henry.
Oh, yes, I hired him.
You hired John Henry?
Absolutely.
John Henry was the cook for the family at Saint Hill.
Uh-huh.
He adored Mary Sue.
Yes, he did.
All the servants, all the domestic staff adored her, except me.
And Ken, what were your duties when you were the butler and then also the head of the household unit? What were your duties?
I was actually a butler valet.
Okay.
I had to look after his clothes. I had to set out his clothes for the next day, and then take care of the clothes he'd worn. I had to brush them, get them cleaned if necessary. I had to do some ironing, I had to press pants, I had to clean shoes, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to clean his room and make his bed and that type of thing? No.
No, that was the housekeeper, Mrs. Foster.
Okay.
Gladys Foster.
That's my dog, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't think it was Janis.
No.
Ken, can I ask you a question, Ken? So
Yeah.
what was LRH, was Ron, everybody called him Ron then, right? Or did you have to call him Mr. Hubbard, or how did you guys address him as his staff?
Well, he throughout Saint Hill, he was Ron.
It was Ron.
When I went there, I was very conscious of the fact that I was his domestic service, so I always called him Sir.
Uh-huh.
And then a few weeks after I was in, he said to me in his bedroom, "My friends all call me Ron."
Okay.
But I was still very conscious that I was a servant. I don't think I ever called him Ron. I stopped calling him Sir, but I don't think I ever called him Ron.
How did you address Mary Sue?
And Mary Sue.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you didn't get along great with Mary Sue?
After a while, I did. Yes, she was very cold at first.
Okay.
I mean, she was very quietly aggressive.
Janis, that was how did you view her that way too in your dealings at first?
No. Well, I was a kid.
No, I know, but I meant, could she be that way with other people when they were new?
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, as a kid, she was, she treated me as a kid. I played with her kids.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, one other question. Did Ron have tailor-made clothes, or did he buy off the rack at the stores, or how did he get his clothing?
I couldn't tell you. I don't think he bought any while I was there.
Okay.
I noticed, I mean, you could tell that his clothes were decent quality. They were not very expensive, except for maybe a couple of the jackets, special jackets he had that he wore at big events.
Okay.
Like there was a kind of gold jacket, and there was a light blue jacket, but those were for stage appearances.
Yeah.
The rest of his clothes were, as you can see in this photo with the butler, that was one of his suits.
Yeah.
He wore that shirt outside his collar in the American fashion. That was not English. He had that band, that ascot around his neck. He wore a jacket during the day and an ordinary pair of pants.
Okay.
And all the rest of it.
And then here,
but when you ask him what my duties were when I went there, after I was interviewed, and I could tell you the story of the interview by Ron. Want that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, let's hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. I was interviewed by Irene, then Edgar came and got me and took me down into LRH's office. And we went into this big, beautifully proportioned room with very high ceilings, huge windows, and right at the other end was this great fellow behind his desk. And the minute Edgar and I walked in, he stood up. And that made a big impression on me immediately, because it was extremely courteous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could have waited till we arrived at his desk, and there was a little bit of a walk. Anyway, he was standing up. We approached the desk, and as I got close to the desk, he held out his right hand, palm up, and I grasped it. And there was a moment of recognition. There was something about, I mean, just to look at him from a distance, you could see he was very, very different. very different, very special.
Uh-huh.
But I took his hand and I felt the warmth and softness of his palm, and his grip was quite firm, and there was a look in his eye, and it was friendly, but it also was kind of neutral. It was like, well, let's see what you're going to make of yourself. And I was so overwhelmed by the man's, it's hard to put into words, by his humanity, by his charisma,
Uh-huh.
by his beingness, the warmth, and his enormous humanness, his understanding, his tolerance, his clarity. I mean, the space around him was different from all other space. Anyway, I grasped his hand, and out of the depths of my soul came these words: I'm going to do my very best for you. And with that, I turned on my heel and marched myself out of his office.
Had he even told you you had the job?
No, I was telling him.
That you're taking it.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
I suppose that he and Edgar looked at each other in some surprise and wonderment as I marched myself off. But I thought during the days that followed, that was a very funny way to do an interview. But I mean, he has all the time, and he has so many people around. He can always say, I won't have that idiot anywhere near me.
Right.
And I could have been told.
He never found you to be an idiot.
No. Well, I don't know what was going on, but I wasn't told not to come.
Right.
But I was supposed to start about a week later. And during that week, I was told that a new cook was arriving the same day. That I understood before the interview. After the interview, I was given the horrible news that she was going to be coming a week later.
Oh dear.
Does that mean you had to cook?
I had to cook.
But that was a great kitchen.
It was a big kitchen.
Saint Hill was a great kitchen.
It was a lovely kitchen.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but I didn't enjoy it so much late at night. I'll tell you why. But anyway, I had some experience of cooking. I liked cooking for myself, and I'd worked in these restaurants, and I'd kept my eyes open, so I knew quite a bit. I knew I could keep my end up. So I survived the week, although it was very difficult. I had to do all of the cooking. I had to give the children and I think their governess their breakfast at 8:30.
Okay.
I had to give them and the children, the governess, and the housekeeper their lunch at 12:30. Then I had to be on call to get their breakfast ready when he called down to the kitchen, because they worked all night and got up anytime. He would get up anytime between, 12:30 was very early and 4:30 would be pretty late. But anytime in between then he would call down, and I had to stop whatever I was doing, prepare him a drink of orange juice with a raw egg and a cup of hot chocolate. I had to run upstairs with that, put it on his table in front of his bed, and run back down and cook the breakfast for him and Mary Sue.
Okay.
So I'd run up with that and run back down to the kitchen, and in between all that, I had to organize my preparation and cooking for the children's dinner at 5:30, and whatever else I needed to be doing for their dinner, Hubbard and Mary Sue's dinner at 6:30.
Oh, okay.
So I was running.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no small house.
That's not a small house, no.
No.
But I wasn't used to that kind of work in the kitchen. So I ended up at around 7:30 having served their dinner with a kitchen full of dirty pots and dishes and everything else. And it would take me a good hour and a half or two to get everything cleaned and put away.
Oh, okay.
And then I had to clean the floor. Now, one of the reasons I was doing, I mean, I was working until 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night and exhausted. But I knew that Mary Sue in the wee hours of the night would be in the kitchen preparing a snack or a meal for herself and Ron. And knowing that she wasn't keen on me, I wasn't going to to score a goal on myself by giving her a dirty kitchen.
Right.
That just was not going to happen. But so that went on for a week.
Okay.
Did you have quarters there? Like, where did you sleep?
I had a room on the top floor.
Okay.
Overlooking the lake.
Oh,
Beautiful
okay.
view. Yeah, beautiful view. But I could go back if you like and tell you how my first encounter with Mary Sue worked out.
Absolutely.
Of course. Go ahead.
Okay.
Bear with me. Keep going. I got to get my dog in.
Okay.
Okay. I arrived on a Saturday.
Okay.
And one of the maids was in there to help me get started. She'd done some cooking, and she helped me with the meals up until after lunch, and then she went home. And the dinner for the children wasn't difficult, but the menu for Ron and Mary Sue consisted mainly of fillet steaks. And the instructions were to cook them on a frying pan which had salt sprinkled all over the bottom.
Okay, yes.
No fat. And I looked at this and I thought, I wouldn't know how to do that. That's strange to me. I'm sure I'm going to mess it up. So anyway, but I have no choice. I've got to do it. Well, it comes about 5 or 10 minutes to 6, and I'm in the kitchen, and I've got the first course ready to take into the dining room, which is at the other end of the manor. And in marches Mary Sue. She doesn't say a word. She goes straight to the fridge, gets the steaks out, gets the pan, sprinkles the salt, heats it up, and cooks the steak. The two steaks. And then she tells me to get the frozen veggies were on the menu, to get them ready, and then to bring in the first course and the steaks and the veg when they're ready. That's all and she didn't say please or thank you. So I served the steaks and came out of the dining room. I wasn't going to stand around in the dining room. There was no bell. I went back a few minutes later to see if anything was needed. And they were sitting at the table in the middle of the room. He was looking to my left, and she had her back to me. They sat at a corner. And he looked at me sadly, and he said, "It's too salty." And for a moment, I was speechless. I couldn't really say, well, she did it, not me.
Here's a picture. Here's Ron and Mary Sue right there.
That's exactly how she was in those days.
Yeah.
Anyway, she immediately spoke up and said, I cooked them. So that put me off the hook.
Right.
Anyway,
well,
what?
No, it's funny you bring up the salt because in 1979, everyone was on liberty and it was just Ron and myself. And so he taught me how to cook steaks using the salt in the bottom of the pan, and that was it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how he got used to it. Anyway, where was I?
Mary Sue.
Mary Sue.
I wasn't put off. I just felt this thing from Mary Sue and the failure with the steaks was just a challenge. I'd got my feet in the manor, and I wasn't taking them out of the manor unless Ron told me to. And I'd managed things with Mary Sue as I could, but I wasn't going to push her one way or the other. I wasn't going to certainly not push any of her buttons. But I guess that she'd heard something from London, where I must say I wasn't a brilliant member of the Scientology community. I wasn't, I was pretty much a failure. But what struck me also was that the two of them had sat at the table, and she didn't seem to have noticed that her husband wasn't eating his dinner. And that for a start is real strange. And there was no conversation about, well, what's wrong with the steak? And then when he said it's too salty, then he motioned to me to take the plate away. I took it away, and there was no order about, well, get him something else. We just take it away and leave it.
Right.
So I had grave questions about what was going on at the very top of Scientology in that particular moment.
Can I ask you a question, Ken?
Yes.
Like years later, you were LRH's personal communicator for years, including on the Apollo and also in Clearwater. And Mary Sue was the guardian. She was the head of the guardian's office. Did you have to interact with her with your position as LRH personal communicator, or was she always sort of separate and you guys never really had to deal with each other?
We didn't really have to deal with each other. She was the guardian, and then she became the controller.
Right.
Anything to do with her hat was always directed between her and him.
I see.
I was excluded from that line, and I never questioned why. I just assumed so that I would never be a witness.
Right.
In the stand.
Well,
it's funny. It's kind of the same way when I worked with David Miscavige. His wife Shelley, they had a connection, and she knew what things that I never knew, even though I was working for David Miscavige.
Right.
They had their own personal alliance in terms of what they were doing. And I never always knew what they were up to.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to know what was going on with the GO.
Yeah.
There were a number of times when on the ship, LRH tried to get me between him and Mary Sue. And I always backed out of it. I never discussed it with him, but I just didn't ever get there because it would have been meaningless. She was his wife. She could have kept him awake all night.
Right.
And there's no way I could fight with that.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, Janis, let me ask you a question, Janis, since you brought that subject up. As messengers, like when you all were messengers, I know she wasn't really she wasn't really fond of all the messengers, isn't that right?
No, she did not like many of the messengers.
If LRH and Mary Sue were having, a disagreement or an argument, was there ever anybody who could step in and help mediate, or did they always just work it out themselves?
They worked it out between them.
Okay.
Mary Sue was very good with him. She would help calm him down in many situations.
Uh-huh.
And whenever he would get hard on the crew, she's the one who would get him to back off. So it was good to have her around.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
There were a few times I remember on the ship, maybe 3, when she was in her office and obviously something really upset her. And she marched up to the door of the research room and said, "Okay, I resign," and marched back to her office.
That's right.
And he would send the messenger at once, and she would go in, and they'd close the door, and she'd come out laughing.
Yeah, that's right.
Could they get in loud arguments?
No, not that I ever saw.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm trying to take it back for future, but back to Saint Hill. So
Yeah.
how did you transform from being the butler to being his personal secretary? Do you want me to show some more of those pictures, Janis?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I got, what is that, Philip or whatever? What's his name?
Phil Carino.
Yeah, I'll show that picture here.
Phil Carino was the LRH communicator. So all communications to LRH went through Phil. And some people in the Sea Org would remember Monica Carino. He was married to Monica, and she was the HCO exec, wasn't she, Ken?
She became that, yes.
Yes.
He looks
And
like
he
looks like he's about 18 years old there.
Yeah, he looks very
was
young.
looking.
But
Yeah.
I do want to comment, when Monica was the HCO exec, Ron gave her a Mini Minor.
Yes.
Gave her her own car. And I remember at Saint Hill as a kid seeing in gold LRH on the side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
She was one of my favorite people, with Monica.
So what did the LRH communicator do back in those days in Saint Hill?
Well, he put me on as LRH Com Saint Hill when I left the household unit.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't really hatted. He gave me there were a few very brief briefings beforehand, and one very interesting thing he said to me, which impressed me, was, part of your job is to prevent me from making a mistake. Well, we forgot all about that. Not too much longer after that, especially in the Sea Org. But he put me on post without really any hatting. And all I had was a policy letter about compliance and some forms to fill in, some nudge forms.
But you also knew how to communicate with him and work with him.
In a way, yes.
Yes.
But he was already changing as soon as I became, well, yes. He was changing when I became LRH Com Saint Hill. Now, one of my first unpleasant experiences was I was working right at the end of the monkey room. That's where my desk was.
Okay.
Explain what the monkey room is. What is that?
It used to be the ballroom.
Okay. It's called the monkey room is because the grandson of Sir Winston Churchill painted the walls with monkeys. So you walk in there and it's all just monkeys all over the walls. And so it wouldn't get messed up from cigarette smoke or just from the air. There was plastic hanging from the ceiling to the floor to protect the monkey wallpaper or the walls, the paintings that were done.
Okay. And he built up a wooden barrier around the whole wall.
That's right.
Yes. Anyway, I was in the monkey room and LRH appears in the door, way down at the bottom, and he's pointing to me like that. I mean, he's pointing right at me. So I have to rush to him, and he wants a telex sent to Ray Thacker in London, telling her to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And he dictates the telex, and it's very out of ARC. I do not like this one bit, because I know Ray Thacker. She knows me. She's a lovely lady. She used to be the registrar, very friendly, a real good Scientologist. Anyway, I send it, and Ray sends back a little bit of a Q&A. And then I'm pointed at again, and he dictates an answer to this, repeating the order to Ray, and in language that is absolutely insulting. I do not want to send this, but he's right there. So I sent it. And I've regretted it ever since. It's one of the worst things I ever did. Mm. So that was beginning to appear. So where were we?
What were your duties as the personal communicator, like in Saint Hill? Like your office was in the monkey room. Was it close by L. Ron Hubbard's office, or
no?
It was
at the other end of the building.
Yeah, the other end of the building.
So how would he contact you? Did you have an intercom or something like that if he needed you?
No, I had very little contact with him. Philip had more. Philip Carino. He was LRH Com worldwide, and that was a lot closer to L. Ron Hubbard than I was. But I was never his personal anything at Saint Hill. He created the post of LRH Personal Communicator in late 1969.
On the ship.
On the ship.
Yes.
And he put me on it. And I remember him asking me before he issued the order, he said, "Are you all right with this title?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine with it." So that's what he called it.
Because before you was Ken Delderfield, and he was just the LRH communicator on the ship.
He was CS7.
CS7, right, and held that function.
Until I replaced him.
Right. Yep.
So you ended up on the Apollo, right? At some point? But like we talked earlier off camera, you weren't a member of the Sea Organization, were you?
No.
No, Ken was ordered to the ship. You were the LRH communicator worldwide by that time, right?
Nope.
Just Saint Hill.
Nope.
Go ahead, Ken. Tell us. We'll keep guessing until you tell us.
Well, in 66, I was 65. I was demoted from LRH Com. I was promoted from LRH Com Saint Hill to worldwide.
Right.
And then I was demoted from that, and I said I needed more experience in the org, so I went on as director of communication. I was doing that, I think, for a year or more, and then I was put over as director of income under Brian Livingston.
Oh, okay.
With the treasury staff. And then I was back as LRH Com Saint Hill. I spent a little time as, believe it or not, as AG Saint Hill, doing nothing because I refused to. I didn't want the post.
AG is assistant guardian. So that was in the guardian's office.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Joan McKnocker was the guardian, or the AG worldwide. Anyway, when I was then back on as LRH Com Saint Hill, and this is the summer of 68, or early 68. My contract is my staff contract that I signed in order to get power processing earlier was about finished. And I thought, oh, I owe L. Ron Hubbard a letter saying that when my contract is up, I'm leaving. And I said I really wanted to go back and see what I could do for my career in music.
Right, because you're an incredible piano player. I remember that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So his response to that was, well, I could go back to my career in writing. That didn't impress me very much because he had had a career in writing and he chose to leave it to take up something else.
Right.
So I didn't respond to that. I just thought I'm just going to continue with my plan to leave. And during that period, he reorganized worldwide. He put me on as HCO Exec worldwide. Alan Ferguson was the org exec worldwide, and Tony Dunleavy was the public exec worldwide. And Delderfield, who had been on the ship for a few months doing training, I guess, he came back with mission orders as chairman of Exec Council worldwide. And Bill Howey came with him from the ship, and Bill Howey came into the Exec Council Worldwide office and briefed us for a couple of hours. And it was mostly about the new Sea Org ethics.
Right.
And this was, for example, in a condition of doubt, the person had to spend 48 hours out of doors. At Saint Hill, I mean, in the ship, they just did work. But at Saint Hill, it would have to be out in the grounds for 48 hours straight.
No sleep?
No sleep, no food.
Just pulling weeds?
There weren't any orders about what he or she had to do.
Oh, okay.
that I know of.
Right.
Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, I'm HCO exec worldwide, and my primary responsibility is to uphold policy. And here's this guy giving me a complete new rundown on ethics, which has nothing to do with existing policy.
Who came up with this?
This is
Bill Howie.
Bill Howie. So this wasn't L. Ron Hubbard. This was Bill Howie.
Well, he
Bill
wouldn't.
Howie was sent on mission.
He was on a mission,
Oh,
so
I
he
see.
wouldn't.
Okay.
Hubbard knew exactly what Bill Howie was doing,
Okay.
and maybe told him.
Yeah.
So anyway, at the end of the briefing, Bill Howie looks at me, and he says, "Are you all right? You're as white as a sheet." And I thought to myself, this is exactly how I feel. Well, the rest of my introduction to the post consisted of a pile of papers on my desk, all of them urgent. And the top one was a telex from the area sec of Washington, D.C., Natalie Fisher. And she was telling me, the HCO exec worldwide, that Irene Joplin, HCO exec D.C., had been put in a condition of treason by Julia Salmon, HCO exec U.S., and that Irene had asked for a comment on the assignment as she was allowed in policy, and Julia had refused. So I replied to Natalie, I think with a copy to Julia. Anyway, I said, of course she can have a comment. What else would they do if she asked for a comment? She had to have a comment.
Right.
Within an hour or so, I had a telex from, and it said, "Why are you pulling rug out from under Sea Org Mission's feet? LRH."
Oh.
Somebody had forgotten to tell Worldwide that the Sea Org had sent a mission to the exec council, the exec US office.
Okay.
And that actually was Otto Roos. And we found out very quickly that one of the things that Otto was doing, he was chaining the exec staff to their desks.
With a chain.
With a chain.
Wow. Okay.
Jesus.
And here am I, HCO exec worldwide. My primary duty is to uphold policy.
Right.
And this nonsense is going on. And as it happened, coincident with Otto's mission to US, the US income crashed. And
Now, was it in Otto's mission orders, or is this something Otto originated?
Well, I don't know. Could be either. I mean, Otto was perfectly capable of doing that on his own.
Yes. Yes.
So let me ask you a question, Ken. So how was Hubbard at Saint Hill he was at Saint Hill in the 60s and all that?
Yes.
I mean, we know years later or whatever, we hear the horror stories of during the Sea Org and all that sort of thing. And you just told a story about, 48 hours outside and doubt formula and all that. Was Hubbard like that in the 60s, like to the staff, or what was he like then?
When I was with him, in the household, he was invariably warm, friendly, always ready for a chuckle or a laugh. He was always very respectful. He had beautiful manners. He always had a story. He was always very interested in you and what was going on around him. He was not Mr. Big in any way. He didn't puff himself up.
Right.
He was having a good time doing whatever he was doing, and he was enjoying it.
Right. And when did you notice what happened that the change occurred with him?
Well, he got into some kind of strange idea when Philip and I were both LRH comms at the same time. Because one of the things he said to me in that period when I was first on post, he says, maybe I will train you and Philip up to be expediters. And what he meant was that he would train us up to push things through hard.
For compliance.
For compliance.
Right.
That's exactly what he didn't say that, but that's exactly the picture he gave me. That was the energy. So how we got from what I'd known to that, I don't know.
Now, during that time period, wasn't that when they were trying to kick him out of England?
That's what I was just going to ask. What was his concerns? Was it that he was going to be kicked out?
That, I think, was the major change.
Right.
He had taken himself to Rhodesia, to southern Africa, and he made a big mistake, in my opinion, of starting to interfere with the blacks.
Right.
If I can refer to them as that. I don't know what the proper term is, the black people.
Yeah.
And that got up the nose of the pro-British colonial establishment.
Down in Rhodesia.
In Rhodesia. So they kicked him out. And of course they told the story to the Home Office in Britain.
Right, because Rhodesia was part of the British Commonwealth.
I believe it still was.
Yes.
Yes, it must have been, because it was called Rhodesia.
Yeah.
Southern Rhodesia.
Yeah.
Yes,
before Zimbabwe, Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
And if I can go off on a slight tangent, one of the reasons he was in South Africa and Rhodesia, and this is my supposition from what I'd gathered when he used to talk to me over his hot chocolate early in the morning. He would tell me stories about his history as a rocket jockey. And it was noticeable over time that frequently there was a story where he was doing this or that or the other thing, and he died or he was killed, and his back pay got stashed away. Or he had collected a fortune and buried it and died before he could go back and get it.
This is talking about past lives, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. This was space stuff.
Yeah.
And this is obviously a pattern with him. Now, I don't think he ever said so, but he strongly hinted that he had been Cecil Rhodes.
Right.
And Rhodes was rumored to have buried an enormous treasure in the mountains of Rhodesia. So I put two and two together on that, correctly or not. But another interesting sideline on that is that he never knew, or he didn't know at that time, that Cecil Rhodes was absolutely notorious and hated in South Africa because he was a pedophile. He was a pedophile.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And he interfered with black boys on a huge scale, apparently. Anyway, he upset the Rhodesians, and they upset the UK, and that gave the UK an excuse to refuse to renew his permit to reside in the UK. That meant he had lost his home and his family's home. He had lost his comm lines. He had lost his execs.
Yep.
And I believe he still had the opinion that various governments were very anxious to get their hands on his advanced materials.
Right.
And if that's so, that would have been a big problem for him. So his solution was to go to sea.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, first,
excuse me.
Sorry.
Yes.
His next big development was the introduction of the Guardian and the Guardian's office.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, and that was all about effective defense is attack or something like that. It's all through those early geo policies. You defend aggressively.
Right.
Now that indicated to me that he had taken up a posture of fighting the authorities, and that I felt was a bad idea, a bad direction to go in.
Right.
Janis, do you want to do the clear party next?
Yeah, we can do the clear party next.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Now, Ken, what was your job when John McMaster's went clear? He was the first clear in Scientology.
Yeah, this was the Scientology first clear, John McMaster.
I was LRH Com worldwide. And a big flap arose because John was on tour, and he was on a big promo tour. He wasn't clear. He wasn't announced as clear at all. He was on the clearing course. And back at Saint Hill, he and his friends had been talking, and some of them understood from what he was saying that he was very close to finished. And one of them was Blanca Anakin, a nice lady from Austria, whose post at Saint Hill was Director of Success. And Blanca had the idea that John had completed, so she sent him a personal telegram congratulating him.
Oh.
But when it got received, it was taken as from Blanca, Director of Success, and a formal notification that he was the first clear.
Okay, can I interrupt briefly? We have a lot of viewers who don't know anything about Scientology. Can you explain what in Scientology a clear was in those days?
In those days, the clear was the person who had completed the clearing course, and the clearing course was a series of actions that you audited on yourself.
And you got rid of your reactive mind, basically, right? Wasn't that that you were clear of your reactive mind? Was that?
Well, you were clear of the reactive mind that the clear course handled.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So the execs at LA were over the moon. They thought they had the first clear, and they were going to do all kinds of celebrations, but he hadn't actually been declared clear. So I had him flown back to Saint Hill. It was actually the idea of the HSO exec worldwide, then Betty James. She says, better bring him back here, and I agreed, and I ordered it. He was brought back to Saint Hill. He was given a clear check. He passed the clear check, so he was officially clear number one. And they flew him back to LA. Then, very shortly after that, the clears started coming off the clearing course very quickly. And there were several of them, and LRH ordered me. Now, something doesn't make sense.
Well, I remember when I got there in '66, John Mack was the chaplain, so he must have come back to Saint Hill and joined staff.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, I did the clear party when I was still the household officer, and that was a year or two before what I'm talking about.
Oh, so it was before John Mack became clear, you did the clear party.
I was told to do a clear party, yes. I think.
Okay.
Can I show those pictures, Janis?
Pardon?
Can I show those slides now?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, show this. Yeah. Here's one of the pictures taken at the clear party that Ken was told to put on.
At Saint Hill in England. That's
at Saint Hill in England. And many people, old timers watching this, will remember Phoebe Maurer. And Phoebe's there, the second from the right.
Yeah.
And
Phoebe was the minister at my wedding when I got married to Julie. She was my minister. Yeah.
Yeah. Ken, do you want to say anything about this?
Not really. I remember Joy Alleman.
Okay.
South Africa. I gave her nuts at Flag later.
Who, Joy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to comment. Somebody commented in one of our other videos yesterday or whatever that, from the Apollo, that the staff and the women and all that, they look like they were, post hippies or all that. Well, these women weren't hippies. You know what I mean? You can see they were dressed to the nines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is in the 60s. And the men wore suits and ties. You'll notice that in a lot of these photographs. It's pretty impressive.
Yes. Now here, these people are all standing in line to get the buffet. The young child there is Arthur Hubbard. But if we go to the right side, second from the right, that is Ken.
Ken Urquhart, our guest, yeah.
You were probably, what, 26, 27 maybe?
Yes.
You're the tall gentleman in the gray suit.
Yeah.
Right. And then next to him, slightly in front, is Phoebe. And next to her, behind a lady, is Joan Robertson. And then Hannah is next to her. You can just see the top of her head. And then Leon Steinberg was back in the doorway.
I'm sorry, I'll go back.
The left side, in the back in the doorway, is Leon Steinberg. Okay. I'm just bringing that up for old timers who would remember these people.
Okay.
And then here, these are people who are sitting in the chapel. Is that right, Ken? The chapel is where the event was held. Yeah, and they're watching the event. In the front row is Virginia Downsburg is the first lady, and the next to her is Monica Carino, and her husband is back next to her clapping, and David Ziff, and the young lady on the front right is Diana Hubbard.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is Liz Sabine. I knew Liz back in Australia. She was a singer, and in the 80s, she was a singing teacher, a vocal teacher in LA, and actually was a coach for Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. Anyway, but she was the MC for this event that Ken put on.
Okay.
And there is Mary Sue dancing with Quentin.
With her son, Quentin.
Yes. So Ken, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about the event.
Thanks. Well, I'm seeing that I have two different parties mixed up. But this one, the first clear party, I wasn't clear myself, so I had no reason to be there except that Jenny Edmonds, who was clear, I think she was running the clearing course at that time, and her partner Red Sharp were clear. They were going. But Jenny wanted to sing, and she wanted me to play for her while she sang. She was singing a Puccini opera aria. So that's why I was there. But the earlier party I was thinking of was I think a completely different party. It was when I was household officer, and he told me to put on a party. For some reason, I've completely forgotten, and I had the two parties mixed up.
That's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us about the party you put on earlier.
It was held mostly in the pavilion. I forget what it was for, but I was the household officer, and LRH gave me this order to put on a party. I had no idea what to do, so I went to Red Sharp, who was a friend, and he told me what to do basically. So I bought a lot of favors for the ladies and some favors for the men, and I handed them out as they arrived. And the party, it went well. I mean, you get Scientologists together, and generally speaking, they'll all have a good, friendly time together. Right. I don't remember anything else I did.
So were you like the host for it, or did Ron become the host when he showed up for it?
I don't remember that he showed up for it, but I guess he did. But he just milled around and was with the other guests. He didn't really do any hosting that I remember.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Ken? You were quite an accomplished piano player. Diana Hubbard became a piano player. Did you have any interaction with her and her piano teaching or piano playing ability as a young girl?
No, but I was instrumental in helping her get her first piano.
Uh-huh.
And I was household officer. And one day he said to me, take Diana up to London and get her a piano. That's all he said.
Okay.
So I made the arrangements, took her up by train to London, and my plan was to take her to 4 or 5 different makers. There was Bechstein in one street, and there's Blutner, there was Steinway, and a few other very well-known names. And I was going to just take her around the lot, but I forgot to tell her that. So we went to the first one, which was Bechstein on Conduit Street, and she fell in love with the piano there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one she got.
So is that the same one that was in her bedroom at the manor that ended up on the ship?
Yes.
Okay. And the one on the ship, same piano, was in the A-deck lounge, and late at night after the Commodore had secured, you could hear Ken playing the piano.
Well, quite often I went down when he was at his desk, and he let me. But what happened there was, after I was CS7, I think it was, for a little while, he sent me a note. And he said something about the piano. Why don't you work up a repertoire? And he was telling me I could use Diana's piano. I hadn't thought of it before then. So after that, I just went down whenever I felt like it, whenever Diana wasn't playing. And, I have to admit that I never talked to Diana about the fact that I was using her piano.
I always thought there was an agreement there, because she never mentioned any problem with it.
Never said a word to me.
Let me to wrap this episode up, Ken, I wanted to ask you a question. Okay, obviously we got a lot more to cover, right, with you, but when did you eventually leave, like, the Sea Organization Scientology? And then weren't you an auditor out in the field for quite some time after leaving? Can you tell people what you were doing?
I left in November 1982. And then I went home. I went to my father and stepmother's house in Wales, South Wales,
mm-hmm.
where the unemployment was like 22%. And I drifted around in England for several months trying to find work. But I had all those years of experience I couldn't explain to anybody.
Right.
Join the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So eventually I got an invitation from Bruce Thompson to go. He said he would fly me over to the US to work with him.
Uh-huh.
And that was, like that was a blessing out of the blue. So I went over, and it didn't work out well with Bruce. Then I ended up with David Mayo in his new center in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
Montecito.
And you were an auditor, right? You were doing processing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was auditing mostly knots.
Right.
And up until then, it had never entered my mind that I could audit knots outside the C of S.
Right.
Up till then, it was just a big no. You don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
David changed my mind. But I'd been there for a little while, and then I had some auditing. One of his clients wanted auditing out in New Jersey. I went out there, and when I was out there, I met Doreen Casey, who was an old friend from Saint Hill.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I gave her a DAP interview, and she said that she would set me up with my own clients, she being a reg type.
Uh-huh.
So eventually she did, and I moved to Miami, where she set me up with a couple. And I stayed in Miami auditing until that was between 84 and 90, I think, around 90. In 90, I moved back up to New Jersey, close to Bruce Thompson.
Uh-huh.
and I was auditing out of there. I was a traveling auditor mostly. You know, you'd be in touch with somebody who wanted to continue, but not in the church.
Right.
And you'd get on a plane with your meter and your folder of materials, and you'd fly off, and you'd have no idea what you were going into. No idea at all. And I tell you, I've slept in some very dirty beds.
Okay, so Ken, according to David Miscavige in Scientology, you were a squirrel, right? And a suppressive person like the rest of us, right?
Absolutely. Well, I had been declared.
So have we.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had 2 declared. The first one was rubbish. The second one was a little better.
Yeah.
Who declared you?
I think the first one was Ray Mitoff.
Oh, Ray Mitoff. Okay.
He was CSing at Flag, and
Okay,
he declared me. Yes.
Okay.
He was a senior CS. He declared me because I'd been on the phone to Liz Gablehouse, who had been declared and who left, went home to Tallahassee, and I was on the phone trying to persuade Liz to come back.
Oh.
Which is completely stupid and completely useless. Anyway, Ray, I was attempting to handle Liz, quote unquote, and I got declared for it.
Oh.
By Ray. But then they put out a different one a few months later after I was back in Wales, and that was just slightly more sense.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Great. Is there anything else, Janis, you wanted to ask him before we end off here?
No, because we've still got more to go, so we'll do that another time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate it. It was fun. I enjoyed this.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you very much, Janis, and you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me and letting me. What?
I'm going to take you out of the stream, but you'll still be there. Hold on till we close the show out because we still want to talk to you a little bit afterwards. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Say thanks, Ken. I'm going to take you out now, but just hang on. You're going to be able to hear what we say, but I just wanted to, we'll bring you back in after we're done. Okay, hold on. Anyway, that's Ken Urquhart. He was LRH's personal communicator for years and Butler and household staff, and we hope you all enjoyed that. We're going to be doing quite a bit more on that. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe to our channel. We need more subscribers. It gets the word out to other people who have not seen our channel, and we really appreciate it. So click that like button and subscribe to our channel. And then Janis, what about this? Questions they can ask us in the comment section, right?
Yes, they can. And yeah, we have been noting down different questions. And this afternoon, not this afternoon, but
this evening.
Every Saturday, we do question and answers, Saturday or Sunday, depending on what's happening. But we're going to try and keep that in on a regular basis so that people can call in, chat with us, and ask questions. And we will also note questions throughout the comment sections. And next time we will be trying to answer those.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to see, we're going to have Ken back again because we've got some other things that we want to talk to him about that we think he'll enjoy. We have a lot more photographs to share as well. But until then, we really want to thank you for watching. And Janis, good to see you again.
Yep, you too, Mark.
All right. And until the next time, we'll see you later, okay?
Bye, everyone. Thank you.